Hello, everyone. Hey, sorry about the delay. I assume everyone can see and hear me now. If you have any questions or anything, let me know. Or if there's any problems seeing what we're doing here, just pop it into the comments and I'll talk to you there about it. But we are here tonight for our second design journal for the cool name RPG. Now, I assume you know what that is and why we're here, which is, of course, what that is, because that's why we're here. And it's probably how you found out about it. But on the off chance that you somehow stumbled upon this and don't know what it is, let me just give you a very quick show. If we jump over here to the share, and there you go. There is the cool name RPG, and you guys can see what it is that we're working on here. And it's a Kickstarter to get this made. What we are doing is we are building a brand new role-playing game system, and then we're going to give it away to the entire world for free. That's the plan, start to finish. And the design journals are something that we're going to be doing throughout the process. The design journals are set up to allow us to share with you the process of building this game from the ground up. We're going to walk through it step by step. We're going to show you every step of the way each week. We're going to come to you with more information about the problems we've run into and the cool things we've discovered and the feedback that we're getting from folks. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today as well. But the focus of today's design journal is what I just started to show you here, the Tome of Requirements. And I'm going to be talking about that here in just a moment. We'll get a little more detail for you all about the Tome of Requirements so you can learn a bit more about it. So before I do that, though, there's a couple other topics that I'm going to talk about that I just want to share with you folks. One of the first things that I want to share is just to talk a little bit about our last survey. We did a survey asking people about how is the best way to get in touch with you, what's the best way to have information get information about the project. The things that came out of that survey are that people like forums and Discord for discussion and collaboration. And so we're looking right now at what we can do. We actually have a Discord server and I'm getting it cleaned up and ready for prime time. So I'll be sharing that with all of you soon. We're also looking at what we can do in terms of a forum. Do we want to start our own forum? Do we want to have a chat on an existing forum? Like, I know EN World will sometimes allow you to do hosting and things. So I'm going to look into that and figure out what our best choice of action is there. So that's going to be an important step in this process, is building that space where we can all communicate, because we're communicating pretty well on, say, Facebook, where we've got the cool name RPG Facebook page today. And also we're communicating on the Kickstarter itself, which is also great. And that's just not a great spot for long-term collaboration and communication. So we're going to be working on that. You also told us that YouTube is where you would like us to share live streams and videos with you. And so here we are today on YouTube. This is our first live stream just from YouTube. Had a few bumps, but now I know what happened with it. Just had to get the two systems talking to each other nicely. So all of that is going really well, and I'm very excited about it. The Kickstarter itself, meanwhile, has funded, which means that this is happening. So we're absolutely building this out. It's going to be very, very fun to see this come to life. And then the other thing is that we've actually unlocked our first stretch goal, where we added Andrew Marlowe as a consulting designer. We added even more consulting designers along the way. And that's super important to us as well, because these consulting designers are going to help us to make this from a cool game or a fun project into a full-blown professional grade system that we'll be able to share out to the world long term. So design considerations. So there's a couple of things that have come up recently in terms of design considerations. The first one is the process. Now, something that people have asked about previously is, what's the process going to look like in terms of how we build and design this project? Well, one of the things that I do want to share is that we actually have a pretty formal process for doing this. We posted today in one of our Kickstarter updates a design process document. And that document goes through step by step and explains what the process looks like. So I'm going to give you just a little hint of that here and share with you so you can take a look at it. Let me share, and so you can see what this document is. And what it does is it breaks down the entire development process so that we know how we're going to do this. So now this might seem unnecessarily formal. I recognize some people look at this and go, seriously, man, there's a 7-page document that describes how you're going to build this. But I think the thing that's important to understand is that building a role-playing game system like this, like we are, from the very ground up, from nothing, is a highly complex and complicated process. And in order for us to stay on track and on target, in order for us to stay focused on getting the work done in a timely fashion, we need to be organized in how we do this. And so this process is going to allow us to do this. It identifies different roles within the process. So for example, players are everyone who might benefit from this project. Game masters are folks who are key stakeholders in the project. Torchbearers, deceptively important, but they're the ones who are like turning all the cranks in the background to keep everything moving. So we've identified roles. We've talked a little bit about how this is going to work, how we're going to build a backlog of work that we need to get done. Every 2 weeks, we're going to finish the work and validate that the work that we've created is finished and is ready to go out into the world. And then we're going to share it with all of you. So that might mean that some weeks we're sharing complete rule sets. Other weeks we might be sharing just different bits and pieces so you can take a look at it yourself. But again, this is available in the latest update on the Kickstarter. You can download it, read it at your leisure. It is based on the Agile development process, specifically Scrum, which for anyone who makes software, you've probably seen and heard of this before. But it's a system that's designed to accommodate highly complex and potentially quickly changing projects. So because we're going to be getting feedback from you guys and from our consulting designers and everyone else, because of that, we are going to want to make sure that we continue to iterate as we go along, make minor tweaks and changes to the rules and be able to do that. And this system is very well suited for that. And so this is what it's based off of. So like I said, if you're in the software industry, you know what this is and you've worked with it before, and it's a very effective process when run properly. It's what I do in my day job. And so it's a very useful tool for us to have. So that's the key thing there. And you can take a look at that in terms of just our process. But I want to get into the stuff that's really cool, which is talking about this, our Tome of Requirements. So what is the Tome of Requirements? It's a cool name for a document that guides us as we develop this project. Now, something to keep in mind about the Tome of Requirements before I get too much into what's in it and what's there. This is a living document, all right? So it's not a mimic, unfortunately, which would be awesome, but it's a living document, meaning that it will be changing as we go along. So as we make our way through this project, we will look at this and make considerations of, do we need to alter things? Should we add things to this? Is something no longer makes sense? Because you have to understand that as we build something this complex, we're going to make discoveries and we're going to find out things that we didn't know about when we started. And so this document is a living document that we can adapt as necessary. Now, this document is also exceptionally important, though. And the reason for this is that these requirements are going to define our success or failure at this project. They are the thing that's going to keep us focused and on track throughout our building process. And because we are not locked into things like which die we roll, we are focused instead on what's important to success, like what is fun, for example. You know, how do we define that? How do we define a good gaming experience? What does the gaming experience look like? Because I might say, yeah, I love rolling a D20, but if a D20 isn't the right way to achieve these goals, then maybe we need to look at something else. And so that's part of this process that I want to share with all of you, is to understand thinking through building something completely new and from scratch and considering these high level ideas and ideals as you're building it. So probably the easiest thing to do is to go into this a little bit and show you some of the things that are in here. Now I'm going to start just with the list. There's more details down below. And again, this is available in the latest Kickstarter update. You can download it, read it, and in about a week or so, we're going to be asking you guys for your feedback on it as well. So let me go down here to the requirements lists. One of the first things that I talk about here are deliverables, right? These are the books and things that we're making and we're actually delivering out to all of you by the end of this project. It's both what we're delivering and when we're delivering it by. So you might think that's kind of a weird requirement when it comes to designing a system, but the reality is that if we don't hit these targets, we aren't going to be as successful as we need to be. Now, could we shift those? Maybe, I hope not. But again, you have to ask yourself, you know, maybe we get 3/4 of the way through this and we're like, boy, we really wish we would have done that one part differently. And if we did it, is the benefit we're going to get offset the negative of failing to meet some of these deliverable requirements? Now, This is a little different than some projects in that we're not selling this. We don't have people waiting to purchase it at at game stores or anything. We don't have orders lined up. We have all of you who we've promised we'll deliver this to. But these deliverables are very important in terms of making good decisions about the game, making sure you get what it is that we said we'd give you. Now, the next thing we get into that's a little bit more fun here is the game experience. Now, this isn't about individual moments in the game. This isn't about when you jump off the cliff, what happens, right? This is about what's it like to play the game with your friends and what happens when you're finished. And so one of the first things that we talk about, although this might seem incredibly simple, is that playing Cool Name is fun. And now later in the document, I'm not going to jump down to all of that just yet, but we actually go into details about how we define this. So for example, some of the definitions of this is when you get done, you want to play it again. At the simplest level, that's a success. Another thing is you want to teach your friends to play this game, right? Another is you've had a satisfying experience. It was a good use of your time. These are things that we can measure by talking to our playtesters, especially playtesters who didn't buy in on this project. Like, for example, I'd want to take this to some D&D clubs as we're going along here in the area and just drop it off for them and say, I want you to play this game. Tell me, when you're done with it, I'm going to ask you some questions. Was that fun? Did you have a good time playing it? And see what they have to say about it, right? These are important things that we need to think about. And it seems like an odd thing to put on the list. But then again, if we're not aiming for that, then what are we aiming for, right? Another thing that we have on here is that players can start playing their first game with very little prep using the basic rules. This matters to me a lot. Now, when we define this, we've actually defined it as 20 minutes. So from either the time you sit down at the table or the time you pick up the book, within about 20 minutes or so, you can start playing. Now, here's the caveat. I'm giving this to our consulting designers, some of them to take a look at. It's possible they'll look at this and go, dude, Tassin, that's never going to happen. No role-playing game can pull that off. Or maybe they'll say that's only going to happen if you do the following things. All of these things are going to create design considerations that we have to take into account as we're making important decisions and doing our work building this game. But that's something that I think is really important. Another thing about this, fast-paced and simple for the basic rules. This is one thing that I want to point out, the advanced rules, is that I want to point out that with the advanced rules, we want to offer a rich experience that might not be as fast and easy as, say, the basic rules are, but the extra effort pays off, right? That's an important thing to think about. So I'm not going to go through too many more of these because I don't want this to go on for too long tonight. I know everybody's got things to do, but I'm going to sort of, you can download it, you can read it and look at the rest of these, but these are all things that are very important to us. This one here, though, I do want to touch on, which is games played using the Cool Name RPG rules are focused on the characters controlled by the players, their actions and the outcomes of their actions. Too often what will happen is sometimes, not too often, occasionally what will happen is the system will get so hung up on itself, it becomes about the system and not about the players and what they're doing. So I think that that's super important that you have this focus in all of the rules and in all the things you're building, that the players are why you're doing it. Okay. Now that doesn't mean it has to be about the players every time. It could be about the background, but that still impacts the players. So again, the whole point of this is it makes us think as we're building. Now, I'm going to skip over 2.3. This is, we've said from the start, this is going to be a fantasy role-playing game system. We want it to be fantasy because we feel that gives us better focus in our design and gives us a better chance of both completing it on time and success. We're not going to be going too broad here. We're trying to stay focused so we know what we're building and exactly how it's going to be used. Within here, I just put a list of things that I think are pretty important for us to keep in mind, like there needs to be magic, there has to be, death isn't necessarily permanent, fantastic creatures with physiology and abilities that exceed our reality can exist, things like that. Again, I list all of these things because otherwise you don't think about them. You have to make a conscious effort to think about even simple things. Now, this is where we've gotten into some confusion already. 5th edition considerations. The reason we have this section here is that 5th edition is, without argument, the most played role-playing game system in the world today. Okay, if you don't think so, would love to see the numbers, but everything I know said this is it, right? Even with all the OGL fiasco, this is the most played game. If we want to give lots of players an opportunity to experience something new and different, one of the things we need to do is make sure that those 5th edition players can try out our game. This is the biggest audience of players available, right? If we're going to look for people who are already playing role-playing games to be potential targets to play Cool Name RPG, this is where we need to look. And so we have to think about how this game is going to present to them, what the experience is going to be like, and what it's going to feel like to them. And so for that reason, we have this section here. Now, I want to clarify, this doesn't mean we're making 5.5e or anything like that. Quite frankly, Black Flag is going to be awesome, and they're going to do that really, really well. And so I'm glad that they're doing that. So we don't need to do that. We also don't need to do 5th edition because 5th edition exists. We need to do something different. And this gets into one of the points here. Games played using the Cool Name RPG rules will have a recognizably different feel than a game played using the 5e rules. If we're not giving people something new and different, if they're not playing something that feels different and offers additional benefits, we're not really doing much good in the community. We're not doing much good to them. So we need to make something that offers them something different than what they're getting from the games they're playing today. At the same time, we need to make sure that if they've played only 5e, they've never played anything else. And I'm thinking a lot about kids, right? I'm thinking about the high school students. I'm thinking about the middle school students. And I know that that's not our primary target when it comes to backers, but we all have to recognize that they are the future of our hobby. And by keeping them engaged, we keep this hobby alive for us for many years to come. We need to appeal to all of these groups. And so with this 5th edition situation, we want to make sure that any of those groups that are playing 5th edition today, or the adults who are playing in the live play at the different game stores and things, they can start playing this right away. They don't look at it and go, oh my God, I don't even know what to do. This is too much for me. I can't figure this out. They need to be able to pick it up and be able to, on their own, puzzle out what they're doing and feel confident and competent that they can do this, right? This is true for the GMs too. The GM's got to pick it up. And if all they've ever run is 5th edition, they need to be able to pick this up and go, I can do this. I can run a great game using this. This would be awesome. I totally get it, right? It doesn't mean that it has to have the same stats, or it doesn't have to even have the same base mechanics, but it does have to be, when they pick it up, that they don't look stunned and think, I don't know where to start, right? Otherwise, they're just going to say, okay, that's weird, but I'm not going to do it. I'm going to go back and keep playing my 5th edition game because it's pretty fun. They're not going to realize there are other things out there. So that's the purpose of this 5th edition. By the way, if anyone has any questions about any of this as we're going along, feel free to jump in and ask anything that you need to. I'm happy to answer questions as we go along. One of the things that Melanie mentioned was that it would be awesome to make a huge difference to the one-shots if you could run and learn in about 20 minutes. This is based off my own experience at cons, right? You want people to get into the game and be playing quickly. It's my experience with my friends too. Like, I've got these sets that I'm like, God, do I really have 4 hours to devote to figuring out how to run and play this? I mean, wouldn't it be cool if we could all just sit down at the table and sort of get going? And again, this is the basic rules. It's not the full advanced rule set. But with those basic rules, yeah, it would be great to be able to get folks going with those that quickly. Okay, so talking about 5th edition, one other thing that we put in here was conversion of 5th edition content. A couple of reasons for this. One of them is players, right? Players are going to look at 5th edition content and go, man, I really was enjoying that one book or adventure or setting. I really wish I could play it, but I like the Cool Name rules. Well, if we give them an easy path, we remove obstacles, they have a path to do that, right? The same thing goes for publishers, third-party tabletop publishers. We want to have them take a look at this and go, yeah, I could pretty much do that. That would be awesome. I can do that. That'd be great. So that would be a key part of this, is making sure that they can move that over. One of the folks asked, and I apologize, I can't bring this on screen. For some reason, it's not allowing me to bring the chat on stream here, but says, so other than making it easy to pick up, there are no sacred cows? Not really. I don't think so, because again, we go back to this document. When you look through this document, you're going to see what we mean. And as we go through it tonight, you'll see. The truth is that we can't have sacred cows if we're focusing on requirements. There's no such thing as a sacred cow. What's a sacred cow to me is it is fun. It is player focused. It is an easy game for GMs to run. Those are my sacred cows, not which dice you roll or what stats you have or anything like that, right? Because that ties us into things without purpose. We're just doing it because it's the tradition, not because it's the right thing to do. Now, will we end up using some of that shared language that we've developed over the last few decades? Probably, yeah. We'd be a little foolish to completely ignore it, but that's not going to be our focus. All right, let's get a little bit into the gameplay. You know what? I'm actually going to go down to our more detailed description, even though it kind of fills our screen a little bit. I do want to be able to talk to some of the details. Now, you'll see that down here, farther down in the document, we have the exact same content information, the same list, but we have more details about each one of them, specifying what it means to have things available to ship and download and things like that. All right, game experience. Here's one example of what is fun. When they finish, they want to play more. They want their friends to play. The overall experience makes them happy, even if it's scary or frustrating and things at times, right? They feel like playing the game is a good use of their time. And keeping in mind that fun doesn't just mean only good things happen. Fun means a positive experience overall. All right, so let me scroll down here, get past the fantasy stuff. Yes, we all know what potions are and things. We've talked about 5th edition considerations. Sorry to make you dizzy spinning past things. This is where we get into some of the more important things to me at any rate. This gets into gameplay, what it's like for people playing the game. One of the things, and these aren't necessarily in a specific order. They aren't necessarily grouped in any way other than the grouping I already have here. They are just things that I know are important to me, that I believe are important to our community, and that I believe we should focus on. Now, you guys are going to tell me if I'm wrong. So I'm just letting you know that as I go through this, doesn't mean these are all going to stay here. If you and the consulting designers look and go, yeah, that's not important, we pull it out. This isn't about me, right? If I was going to make my own system, I don't need a Kickstarter. I've done that before. So let's take a look here at this first one. The player of a character that has expended all of their resources still has a meaningful way to participate in the game. All right. This was triggered by the idea of spells, because there's nothing worse than playing a wizard and being like, well, my spells are gone. We're halfway through the night. I'm going to spend the rest of the game just sitting around feeling worthless, right? That's not a fun game to play. We want to keep all the players at the table engaged at all times and give them ways to be engaged. Doesn't mean that things won't be more difficult. Like if your archer never bothers to buy arrows and you're tracking them and you use them all up, we're not just going to say, it's okay that you didn't plan ahead. We'll take care of you. No, that's not exactly what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that there will be ways for them to engage and take part. There are ways that we can do this, some of which are direct in terms of the character, but some are indirect. Indirect things might be helping with, utilizing bonus points like inspiration and things that you've gathered earlier to help create effects that benefit your fellow players. It might be giving assists, rules for assisting other people. There's lots of different ways we can tackle this, but this is one of the requirements we think about as we're building the rules and saying, does it meet that requirement? Does it let this happen? Do we have a way to make this happen? The same thing is true for if a character is dead, incapacitated, or otherwise unplayable. Now, we played Hackmaster, 4th edition, I think is what it was called. It's the 1st edition. But we played Hackmaster, and we played it raw by rules as written. And the rules were the law. And if you died, you started again at 1st level. Honestly, it was crazy and ridiculous. And I thought it was a blast. Not everyone thought it was as much fun as me on our group, but it was a fun experience. But that's not the goal we're going for here, where when you die, you sit around, or when you're unconscious. I feel like that's a real problem in a game, because that's also where that person gets on their phone and now they're distracting other people and now they're out of it. And then they miss part of the story and they don't know what happened. I want to see Cool Name offer options to players who are otherwise unable to participate with their character. Now, that might mean helping the GM with some of the opponents. It might mean utilizing, story elements to help sort of shift the battle or tell a richer, cooler story. There's lots of ways we could do this. And again, this document doesn't lay those out, but that's what the design process is about, finding that out. So both of those things are super important to me. I also want to make sure that this game is providing rewards for players who do their best during the game session. One of the things for me that, again, I think is important, and I'm not saying everybody gets a trophy or anything like that, but the reality is that what is valuable at the table isn't necessarily winning, beating, treasure, death. Those aren't the things that are necessarily valuable, right? Killing things isn't necessarily valuable. A story that you all remember and was hugely impactful to you, that's what you remember at the table. And that's what we want to reward. Now, it gets a little hard to subjectively reward these things. So, what we want to do is make sure that we are offering GMs a way to reward people for all types of behaviors, right? In addition to the classic ones, right? Um, a classic reward would be reward for treasure, reward for killing monsters. Sure, that's fine. We can offer ways to do that, but I want other ways to reward people as well. This one is pretty huge. This requirement exists because we did some early surveys on Facebook. And in those early surveys, we asked what things slow down the games, right? It asked how the game, what stops your game, what causes the flow to break, right? And one of the things that came up was searching rule books for the rule to resolve common actions. So one of the things I want to see us try to do with this is a goal for us as part of these requirements is I want to see us come up with a way to make the most common actions not require the rule book. And this is for using them in the most common way, right? If you want to do something really weird, well, maybe everybody they got to crack the book and figure out a way to do it. But I mean, jumping, swinging, kicking, dodging, no one should have to open the book to do these things. We should either, whether it's handled by great character sheets or an awesome GM screen or what, we need to figure out a way to not have to crack the book for these things, right? And figure out how to do it. So for jumping, right? Maybe jumping distance is based on your height times something, and you just have like a multiplier on your sheet rather than trying to figure out, well, do I have a running jump? And then how much does that add? I mean, it should be right there. You should know before you go to do it how to do it, and it shouldn't be something that's going to cause you to go to the book. And again, we can't fix every situation. If the game is new, some people might still struggle, but I don't want them to struggle any more than necessary. I want to have a goal of making it easy right from the start to resolve these things. Toadstool Hollow says hello. Hello, Toadstool Hollow. Good to see you too. Also, hi to Heath and Michael. Great to see everybody here and hanging out together. Don Roberts says that's the don't be Pathfinder requirement. Spending half the session looking up rules is annoying. Yeah, I'm not going to speak to other games. I've played lots of them, and it depends on who you play with and everything. But I agree. We don't want to be looking up rules all the time because it just stops the game dead in its tracks, and you lose the flow of the game. We don't want to do it. Let's see. Other things like this. If a player or the GM can't remember the rule, they should be able to make something up on the fly that's good enough, right? Some games do this really, really well, right? Hero system I know some people look at it and see it as complex, but the reality is it was so logical and reasonable that if you made up your own rule on the fly, you almost always ended up with the same rule that's in the book, right? It was a really smart system in that way. Savage Worlds does that pretty well too. I want to make sure that Cool Name RPG has a similar attribute where if you need to make something up on the fly, you can do it. It works good enough for the moment and you don't regret having made it up later, right? Because that's the other thing is like, you're like, oh, I wish we would have looked it up. It would have been way easier or something. I don't want that sort of thing to happen after that, after game questioning. I want something where you can make stuff up and feel good about the choices you made when you made them. Again, it's all about keeping the game rolling, right? I also want to make sure that we're not, looking to force people to roll the dice if they don't need to, right? I think that sometimes we get into a mode where every single thing we want to do, and this is not everyone, but I've seen this happen at Tables Are Right a lot, is folks start getting into this thing where they say, I want to roll perception instead of saying, I want to look around and see if I can find any hints of who is staying in this room, right? That's the thing I want to try to focus people on is telling what they want to do, telling their story, and pushing forward with that rather than starting with the dice they want to roll. Furthermore, I think that there's a lot of times in games where we feel where it's necessary to roll dice when it's not. So One of the reasons why in, say, 5th edition, having a class is cool, because it tells everyone, you know this. Wizards know magic. Rangers know the wilderness. Rogues know thieving, right? These are things they know. I'd like to see situations where a rogue or a cleric might have to roll to figure out something about magic, but the wizard can just answer the question. They don't have to roll. They know this. This is what they do. They spent years in school learning this. I want Cool Name RPG to encourage that. Now, a lot of times games say, hey, you don't have to roll all the time. And I don't think that's good enough. I think the system has to push you towards allowing that. I think that the way it's built, so for example, you might build classes in such a way that it's really obvious to people that they don't need to roll for certain types of things. And everyone at the table recognizes that. And it makes your character seem special and important, and most importantly, competent. There's nothing worse than feeling like your character is incompetent at the thing they're supposed to be an expert at, and it takes all the fun out of the game. So, all right, going from here, let me take a look. Nonviolent encounters. This is huge. One of our consulting designers, Owen Casey Stevens, put this into one of our Facebook things as well, and I couldn't agree more. I believe that nonviolent encounters need to be every bit as important and well thought out and well designed as our combat systems are. Combat has always gotten more attention because combat is what was the place where these games were born. They were born out of war game systems, right? No one cared about the parlay in a war game. They just cared about, shooting the other guy. That unfortunately has persisted to some extent. Now, there's a lot, don't get me wrong, there's lots of games out there that have done some really cool stuff. So I'm not pretending like no one has ever done this before or something. I'm saying that for Cool Name RPG, I want to make sure that our non-violent encounters are every bit as exciting and well thought out and well designed as our combat encounters. There's another reason for this that people don't think about a lot, and that happens to be inclusivity. Too often, non-combat encounters get hand-waved away to just role play it. Just role play it. Well, look, some of the folks I have sitting at my table, they're playing a bard. I assure you, they will never get on stage, never act, never tell a story. They don't want to do any of those things. They want to play someone who can, right? Same thing with sword fighting. I'm terrible with a sword, but I want to play someone who's good at it. We need to create a system where we give folks opportunities to make those experiences every bit as rich and fun as the combat opportunities, and give these folks who don't live in that sort of a world, who don't do that sort of thing, the chance to say, yeah, I can do this. I want to do this. I want to get involved in this. Otherwise, they're just like, yeah, I'm not even going to do that, because otherwise they're going to make me role play it. And it's not me. It's not me. It's not what I do. It's not what I want to do. So a very good reason. And, when I say inclusivity, what I mean is that there are neurodiverse people who, like myself, who there's things that I like to do in games, but please don't ask me to act it out and do it. I don't want to do that, but I still want my character to tell that story, right? And again, this talks about cool ways that you can do this. All right, let me go on from here. Oh, and just to be clear, that doesn't mean you should be rolling for more stuff. It just means that you can create cool, almost, you could think mini games, maybe. I don't know. We'll have to work together with you guys and our designers to figure out how to do it. Doesn't mean we roll more. It just means that we have an enriched way to do it. This one is important to me too. Players have meaningful ways to contribute to every encounter, even if their character can't. God, how many times have you been like, we're going to go to the ball and talk to the nobleman and try to get the information we need? The barbarian sitting there going like, well, the player says, I guess I'll get on Facebook for a while and you let me know how it goes, because my barbarian is not going to be useful in that situation. So what sometimes happens is people tend to skip over those things, or they don't do them at all. Like, for example, hacking, classic one, right? Someone's going to go hacking. Well, everyone else just leaves the room and goes like, I'll take a 20-minute break while the dude does his hacking. I want us to be thoughtful about this so we can create situations where everyone can be part of the encounter, even if their character isn't. Again, this is going to be a challenge. We got to figure out how to do this, but I think it's super important. You don't have to use the rule book to use a power spell or ability. Now we're not talking about normal actions like jumping. We're talking about things like, if I've got a fireball spell, I should be able to cast it without opening the spell book. The rule book. I should be able to just cast a fireball spell. I should have everything I need to do that. Does that mean it's all in the character sheet? I don't know. Does it mean that it's so intuitive, people just know what to do? This is what we're going to figure out, guys. This is where we're going to get ideas from all of you and our designers and myself, and we're going to come up with ways to do that. Bookkeeping operations don't break the flow of the game. Yeah, we all know we don't want everyone to stop and start counting up their arrows. Even worse are HP, right? Damage, where everyone takes a hit and then the whole game stops while someone figures out where they're at. I'd like to see that be more streamlined and an easier experience for folks. Let's see. Oh, when you are rolling dice, I want to make sure that it's making the game more fun, not that it's just the rule. Because that's the thing that matters to me, is that you shouldn't be rolling dice if it's not fun to roll those dice and see what comes out of it, right? And fun could mean, how badly do you fail? That can be fun. But at the same time, that's the point. It's not just rolling the dice for the mechanic. Let's see what else we've got here. Cool name RPG rules provide players and GMs with tools to make games fun at all stages. This is where we get into things like session 0, right? Everything should be fun, right? I know some stuff will require work. Don't get me wrong. Some stuff is a little bit of a grind, but look, if shopping isn't fun, no one's going to go shopping. If advancing characters isn't fun, everyone's going to hate advancing characters, right? You got to make sure that if we put something in the game, it's fun to do, right? That we make it a fun experience. Balance of player engagement is more important than mechanical balance. There's so much focus put on mechanical balance that people sometimes forget that that's not what it's about. People don't mind playing C-3PO next to Luke Skywalker as long as that player who's playing C-3PO is still important to the game. They can still take part in the game. They only feel unbalanced when they can't do anything of value. So we need to make sure we're designing a game that gives people things to do that are of value at all times. This goes back to some of the things we said earlier, right? So that's really important, and it's more important. Balance for the sake of balance is great math, but not necessarily fun, right? Same with simulating reality. I mean, I'm going to admit, I love simulationist games. They're a lot of fun, but the truth is that unless you're adding something to the game with that reality, it's not worth doing, right? We need to be thoughtful about that. Now, keeping in mind that simulating reality oftentimes is a thing we do to avoid breaking the suspension of disbelief. We do it because it avoids arguments, because people can go, well, that's just the way it is. It's real life, so everyone stop fighting about it. But there's also the difference where we perceive reality differently than it really is. I use this example. The whole rats squeaking is just usually in movies a bunch of chicks peeping, because rats don't do that when they swarm, but we feel like they do. And if they were all running silently, it would seem a little weird for most of us if we're not rat people. So yeah, again, looking at why we're simulating reality and making sure there's a good reason for it. Basic rules. I'm not going to go into detail here. If you use the basic rules for something, you can just use it in advanced rules. You don't have to try to rejigger it or rebuild your character. I don't want that leap from basic to advanced to be a pain in the butt for folks. Let's see. That's pretty obvious. Players could choose to play any type of living creature in the game in Cool Name RPG. I know not everyone's going to want that, and you shouldn't. You should build your setting the way you want it to be. You should have playable character species and lineages, whatever you want to call them. That's fine, but I'd like to ensure that the system we build allows you to play any of those. That doesn't necessarily mean that every monster write-up is going to be super detailed like a character, but it means that if you wanted to play that monster, you could drop them into the character mold and play them. This is hugely important because so many people love to play goblins and orcs or whatever else you want to play. A dragon, play pugs. I don't care, right? You can add whatever you want in here. The thing is, the system should still support playing that game. And this is also part of our whole idea of empowering third-party creators and homebrewers to make stuff. So we want to make sure that they've got that. Customization. So this gets a little bit into this. I'm not going to spend a lot of time because I'm actually a little over. I was shooting for half an hour, but looks like we're coming up closer on an hour. But I'm going to finish these things up here. Instructions for making your own rules are clear and intuitive, that you know that you won't break the game. That's important to me, that we're creating rules that people can follow so that as they're building stuff, they feel confident they built something cool and good that fits. But this is one that I want to talk a little bit about because I think this is going to be very, very cool. A person can easily add or remove rules from the game to tailor the experience to their tastes. I want us to come up with a system whereby we can add rules in a modular way and remove them. I know that that's going to be a challenge, but I think we can do it. We've got some really smart people involved and all of you. So I believe that we can do this. And then it's easy to keep track of what those rules are, what rules you have in there. So I want to be able to set this up so that if I want to slip in a different initiative system, I know exactly what the impact that's going to have on the rest of the game. I understand what I need to be concerned about, and I can do it without like tons and tons and tons of work making it happen, right? I know that there are people who are just going to want to play, ranked initiative. That's fine. We should be able to let them do that. But there's also people who are going to want to say, hey, I've written up this really cool initiative system based on character speed and a number of actions. Awesome. That should work. Are we going to present all of those in our books? Absolutely not. We can't. But we should build it in such a way that if someone were to yank it out and drop in something else, we give them the guidance they need to do it in a way that's going to work within the context of the game. And that'll be awesome. We'll get so many cool things. I have this dream of people saying, here's what we're playing. We're playing Cool Name with the following mods, right? And tick, 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 tick. They check them off and people are like going, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I like that. Almost the way that modders can do things with a lot of games like Minecraft and things, right? Being able to add things in. All right, we are almost through this list here. And so I'm not going to go through all the rest of these. Game mastering is in here, some things about that are important to game masters. Third-party creations. We don't have a lot here because a lot of it's covered in the other sections for now. And we're going to build this out as we talk to more third-party creators. But this is an important part of this because the more people building stuff for Cool Name, the more cool stuff we'll all have to play with. And that brings us to this last section, which is our content worksheet. I call it a worksheet because this isn't a final list. This isn't everything that's going to be in. And this doesn't mean this is how it's going to appear in the game. But these are things we have to consider as we're building. These are points that we have to touch on and make decisions on along the way. Things like dice mechanics. Starting out, base mechanics is a key thing. What is the base resolution mechanic? How do you resolve something that requires some sort of a randomness or a uncertainty about it? How does that get resolved? Thinking about that is one of the first things we need to figure out, I think. Now, again, our consulting designers will give us advice on this, but I think that's going to be really important to us because everything else will end up being built off of it. Things like target numbers, time required. You start getting into characters and how do we define a character, right? I mean, this is stuff that is obvious to us if you're just rebuilding, say, 5th edition. Yeah, they have got attributes. Let's give them attributes. But I want us to think about it and make a choice. If we have attributes, I don't want us to do it because, if we got like 6 attributes, I don't want to do that because that's what you always do. I want to do it because it's the right choice to help us achieve our goals. And so I want us to think about it. Even if we come to the same conclusion in the end, I want us to think about it. Powers and special abilities, skills and learned abilities. You start talking about things like bows, variable traits like health and fatigue, things that go up and down during the course of the game, descriptive features. As you guys read through this, think to yourself, I wonder why that's not there, and ask us. We might have a really good answer for it. Or we might say, oh my God, you're right. We should have put that there. You're right. That needs to go in there as we go through. Now, we've tried not to get too specific, right? I'm not in here going counter spelling, right? That's not something that's in here. Right now, I have as a mechanic for resolution. We want to be able to have magic. Counter spelling is really just an opposed. In fact, I just realized now I don't have opposed actions listed here. We should have opposed actions in there. Thank you for helping me to figure that out just by talking to all of you. But we have the concepts here. We don't necessarily have the full breakdown of it. Let me give you another example. I'm going to go down to some conditions, some damage issues. If I scroll down here to debilitating temporary. What's a temporary debilitating condition? Well, it's a condition that makes the game harder for your character for a temporary period of time. This could be fatigue, it could be injuries, it could be wounds. I don't think we want to say debilitating injuries is the attribute, because that's kind of vanilla. Like, we might want a little more character than that built in, but each of those things represent that type of rule mechanic, and so we need to make sure that we support that rule mechanic and understand how to use it. The last thing that's not in here, and we're actually going to start wrapping up here. The last thing that's not in here are what I call unit tests, because again, it's a software thing, but it basically are a series of actions that the rules have to support. We started collecting these on the Facebook page. When I get the forum or Discord up and running, we'll create a thread just for that. But what these are things that people love doing in role-playing games, and we need to make sure we can handle that and make it fun. So a great example is, I want to take a glass vial of oil, throw it at someone, have it break on them, cover them with oil, and then I want to set them on fire with a torch. Okay, we have to be able to handle that. That's a great point. Let's make sure that our rules can handle that, and that we're building with those things in mind. And that once we're done, it's fun to do those things, right? So we're going to have a whole list of these that we're going to build over the course of time, and that's going to help sort of guide us as well. So it's a lot. And I recognize that. As we go through this, I'm talking about a lot of content, a lot of information. It's highly complex, but that's what we're embarking on. And that's why I want to show everyone as we go along. I want you guys to go along with us as we all together take on this challenge that so many have taken on before us, with so many amazing games over the years. And I want us to see what we can do as a group. All right, folks, I've talked way too long. I'm going to call this good for the night. In the meantime, if you have any other questions, let us know. This will be recorded, so if you know someone you're like, oh man, you should have watched, it was amazing, you can always tell them later. But I'll go ahead and wrap things up for tonight. We'll see you on the Kickstarter. Keep telling your friends. Apparently people aren't seeing our emails or our posts. I don't know how to get this in front of folks, so hand selling this thing to people is probably the very best way we can keep it rolling. So make sure to pass things along to friends and neighbors and other gamers, and tell the guys at the game store and the people at the game store. We'll talk more soon. Thanks, everybody.